Alright, we're about to level off at 1300 feet. 30,000 feet, sorry, I keep doing that. Knowledge handoff. So no doubt we're going to actually be cleared to descend further now. But first let's tune to the French ATCs and say bonjour, mon baguette. That's my French accent.
Paris Center, Bombardier, November 45, Lima, Romeo, with you, 13,100. Bombardier, November 45, Lima, Romeo, Paris Center.
They'll clear us to descend further. I assume 3,000 feet.
Bombardier 5, Lima,
7,000 feet, alright, never mind.
7,000. Descend and maintain 7,000. Bombardier 5, Lima, Romeo.
There we go, 7,000 feet. Making sure our vertical speed is correct, and it is. And as you can see, we are about to cross into the 10,000 feet ceiling, and that's good because we are just doing 250, so we're just under the speed limit. At this point, we might as well reduce our speed to 220. Just making sure the auto throttle stays on pretty much idle at this point. It's always a good idea to look at what the auto throttle is doing if you want to become a better pilot and understand it and kind of question it and then, you know, pretend like it's you making the decision and not the computer. We also might want to switch to nav mode right now because we're going to do an ILS approach, and we're already flying on the heading buck as opposed to the nav anyways, so there's no real reason to stay on GPS when we're not going to fly GPS anymore. And we're just about to cross 10,000 feet. Or as you should actually say it as a pilot, 10,000 feet, I believe. But I haven't really taken that to heart very well yet. I keep still using 9 as opposed to 9er, and I keep saying 10,000 as opposed to 10,000. I guess those are things that come with experience. Not that they really matter if you're just in a flight sim right now. Alright, this is as good a time as any to start thinking about the landing at this part of the flight. Let's turn left 170 before we do that though. It's just a slight change. Alright. Of course. Now it's 140. I wish those French ATCs would make their mind up. There we go. So thinking about landing, what we want to do is we want to, right now the aircraft is in what I call a, basically a cruise configuration. That means no spoilers, no flaps, gear is up, everything is set to be flying cruise, and that's what we've been doing, right? Now we want to go into another configuration, which is what I refer to as the approach configuration. And for the approach configuration, we want to be at a speed of 180 knots, 180 knots. So we're just going to dial in 180 here, if we can. 190. And 180. And at the same time, we'll also, because the ATC told us to, descend to 3,000. We can do that right now. Alright, just checking. See, there's the bug again with a visual, with our vertical speed. So let's make sure that's correct. And the next thing, okay, so the approach configuration is a speed of 180 knots and also 2 stages of flaps. Okay, so we just put on 8-degree flaps as soon as we're done with the ATC here. So acknowledge that. And before we tune over, well, before we say hello to Rowan approach, we're going to put on 8 degrees of flaps. That's the first stage of flaps. Now, the maximum speed for that, you can't really see it right now, but the maximum speed for that is 250 knots, and we are well below that, so we can do that without flaps ripping off of the wing and to basically throwing us into much deeper shit than we are ever want to be in. So, flaps to 8 degrees. There we go. and that brings the speed down to 180 fairly quickly. Let's tune in. This actually just changed, but it doesn't matter. So now we're talking to approach, and remember it says approach in the name. That's why we're bringing the plane into approach configuration. It's very simple.
November 45, Lima Romeo, LPO approach, Roger, altimeter 2992. Bombardier 5 Lima Romeo, UR2.
Turn right 195.
Turn right heading 195, descend and maintain 3000, cleared ILS, runway 23, approach, maintain 3000, fuel established on the localizer. Contact the ILS tower on 119.15.
All right. Acknowledge that approach clearance. And we can see the glide slope is in range right now, so that's good. Tune to the tower, contact the tower. We're having trouble dropping the speed down to 180, but that's just because we're still dropping altitude. As soon as we level off here, very soon at 3,000 feet, we will actually drop the speed down easily to 180. And we'll put in another stage of flaps, the 20 degrees of flaps, or stage 2 of flaps at that point, where the safe speed to do that is actually 200 knots. So right now we are not safe to enable flaps, but we will be in a second. And we have pattern entry instructions, so at this point we can switch to nav mode since we're in range of the ILS, and this will actually line us up with the runway, which is at heading 230 because it's runway 23, which we expected because that's the ILS thing we wanted to land at. So it's going to be right here about, because you can see 230 is right there on the compass. Alright, so we are at 189 knots, so now it's safe to bring in the second stage of flaps. So now flaps 20, and that means right now the aircraft is has successfully arrived in what I call the approach configuration. That is 20 degrees of flaps and a speed of 180. And we're in nav mode to align to the runway. So that's all good. Now we're approaching, and the last thing we have to do before landing is actually to bring the aircraft into a third stage, and that is the landing configuration. Okay, so from cruise configuration to approach configuration to landing configuration, and the timing when we do that is when this vertical glide slope indicator, the vertical component of the ILS landing system here, this green diamond or triangle, starts coming alive. That is when it starts moving. And then we have a couple of things to do that I'm going to talk to you, that I'm going to basically talk over with you when that happens. But I might as well basically prepare you. It's very simple. We want to turn on the lights. We want to hit the approach button. We want to drop the speed to a 140. We want to bring the gear down, and we want to bring in at 150 or lower of speed. We will bring full flaps down because that's safe to do at that point. And then we will also arm the spoilers, and then we are ready to land. Okay, that's basically the landing checklist. And there's the runway. The ILS system has now lined us up successfully with the runway. Or it's not quite there yet, but it's trying its best to do that ASAP.